Catch the NBA playoffs on Sling TV, the most flexible live TV streaming service, putting consumers in control to watch games their way with flexible subscriptions. Want to catch one game or a full series on ESPN? Grab a 1, 3, or 7-day pass. If you want to catch as many games as possible, get a monthly subscription with our ABC, NBC, and ESPN combo package. Either way, Sling lets you watch the playoffs your way with no long-term contracts. Learn more at sling.com.
Welcome into the Irish NFL Show. It is the morning after the opening round of the NFL Draft. This is the Irish NFL Show brought to you in partnership with QuinBet on the Believe Network. Well, it was a long night and it went till 4 a.m. And yet Craig Rigdon has joined me from the airport to discuss a very brief podcast that could have had an instant reaction to what happened last night with some very surprising moves. Craig, how are you today after last night?
I think I'm running on around about 4 hours sleep after the hotel was nice and busy this morning and loud. But yeah, it's still processing everything. I think from a Giants perspective, it's taken a while to process it. And I think there'll be a lot of teams out there who are still trying to process what happened last night with their teams. Because there was trades galore, there was surprise picks, there were teams reaching. Like it was one hell of a first round, you've got to be honest.
It's I was just like, I know we were reflecting on this. This is the third year in which we've done it live, and the first year when we were based out of Cork, it was like chalk. It went pick for pick. Most of the picks were within reason. Expectations were kind of similar to what we've seen in mock drafts. And last year, to a certain extent, the same, but last night was totally off-putting. It was great. It was exciting. It led to a lot of drama, a lot of very different opinions. We'll jump into it because we are going to call this one a reaction podcast and not get too heavy into the detail. We'll probably hold that back for a Monday when we have the second round and third round tonight, and obviously the back end of the draft taking place tomorrow on the Saturday. I'll start at 4. Now, I shouldn't dismiss what's happened ahead of that, but by and large, within reason, it was kind of general consensus yesterday was it was going to be, well, Mendoza was always 1, and Bailey was suggested as number 2. The Cardinals go running back. But 4 for me was the starting point where it all kind of started to shift dramatically last night because the Titans, for large parts of the offseason, were being suggested as the team that were going to take Jeremiah Love. Sonny Styles was in question. If Reese or Bailey dropped to 4, they'd go there. Completely went a different tangent. And with Carnell Tate, the Buckeyes wide receiver, you were surprised last night. Have you taken stock of it this morning?
I can understand why they've done it. Obviously, Cam Ward came in last year and showed a little bit as a quarterback and needed help there. I do think that maybe Arvell Reese was the best pick for them. Jeremiah Love, I think they were all in on though. No one saw the Cardinals taking him, so it was an interesting pick. I think the one person who will be happiest this morning will be Cam Ward. I think they'll look forward to that going forward. Carnell Tate, by de facto, was the best wide receiver available who didn't have the injury concerns like Jordan Tyson did. So yeah, I think they're going to be pretty happy with that.
Arvell Reese goes off the board of 5 for large parts of the draft season. Everyone was suggesting he was either himself or Bailey would go 2, and he falls to 5. Having watched the press conference this morning, Joe Shane and John Harbaugh made it very clear best player on the board by a country mile, and they didn't have any concerns about going ahead and selecting him in an area of which we feel wasn't particular need to the Giants, but yet they see him as too good a talent to turn down.
Yeah, and I've watched that press conference this morning as well, and all you have to look at is what they actually said about where he's going to play. They're going to line him up as the Mike linebacker. He will play linebacker the majority of the time. They will move him to edge as and when, in the same sense of what they did with Abdul Carter, where he was predominantly an edge rusher, and they moved him to linebacker as and when. But John Harbaugh seemed really fired up. They said that, they're lining him up in the A gap, B gap, C gap, D gap, and he continued the alphabet from there. And he looked over the moon with what they did. They said he was the number 1 player on their board outside the quarterback. So I've reflected on it. I don't mind it as much now. I'm interested to see what they do. By all accounts, they said they wanted to take VPA, and to them that was big.
Yeah, potentially maybe we see that wide receiver scenario that's been talked about for quite some time come to fruition tonight in the second round. Chiefs at 6, interesting one for me. Having looked at it even before this morning, more so because of the selection. Because I generally don't feel that they would have went off the board before 9, and yet they've moved the 3 spots to essentially take a player that's been touted to go there for quite some time. Obviously, it was a clear need, a cornerback, bearing in mind they traded away McDuffie to the Rams. They lost another cornerback in the off season in free agency to the Rams. So it was always a pressing need. Felt that at 9 they were comfortable sitting there and getting them. Yet they move up. We all assumed it was offensive line. They did take Peter Woods later on in the first round, bear in mind. So they're really kind of stocked up defensively and given Spagnuolo players that allows him to kind of flourish and put this team back together, even from a defensive perspective. Never mind withstanding the injury on the offensive side of things with their quarterback, Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, like we said last night, we thought Andrew Reid was having the science over protecting Patrick Mahomes, and they did the better at all with their few picks. I still think that Mansell Delane was the first reach of the first round. Maybe not as drastic as some of the other ones, but I just didn't understand why they went up for him. A lot of people are saying, obviously, they expected Reese to fall. They didn't expect the Giants to take him, and that was potentially their pick, and they just pivoted, and Delane was probably the next one on their big board. But they're still getting a good cornerback, and it was, like we said, it was a position of need. Something they needed to address. Right.
I think the next 3 by and large went with form, shall we say? Like, it was always kind of a clear kind of standout if Sonny Styles fell beyond the Browns' original pick at 6. The Commanders would be all over him. They take Sonny Styles. The Saints go Jordan Tyson again. There was always conversations with trying to give Tyler Shough more players around them. Spencer Faneuil seemed an obvious pick, offensive tackle with the Browns. The Giants go offensive tackle. I think we'll probably come back to it in another podcast. Cowboys move up to 11 to take Caleb Downs. Again, not a surprise. Once he was there, it was always kind of in the sweet spot where the Cowboys wanted to be. I'm going to jump to 13, Craig. And look, we've already had a clip go out today of our conversation, the lead up to the selection of Ty Simpson. But I think what's come out of it more so, and again, look, you watch visuals and you watch various different recordings, and things can be taken out of context. But there's so many various different aspects of footage from the press conference thereafter last night, where the GM and the head coach get together and they answer questions from the media. Sean McVay was a bit short with his responses. I wouldn't say he was a bit ratty, but he looked his general demeanor looked of a guy who was a bit disgruntled that the GM didn't select a player that can come in and give an immediate contribution to this Rams team that are really, really pushing hard to try to get themselves back to the Super Bowl and play the game essentially in their home stadium next February in SoFi. So is that what you were taking from that? The Ty Simpson thing is a pick for the future as opposed to the Rams, and in particular Sean McVay wanting the player now to make an immediate piece of the team?
Yeah, this is a small thing, not all day long. You don't need to be an expert in body language to know that Sean McVay is not a fan of this. I think he did see this as being like the year to go all in. A lot of people are now saying, does Sean McVay see himself and his kind of career going forward as being tied to Matthew Stafford? And when Matthew Stafford leaves, is that when Sean McVay is going to leave? There was always talk about him going in to be an analyst or to work in TV, and that could be what happens. But yeah, there's obviously some fractures in that front office there between Snead and McVay at the moment. And McVay was very, very clear that it is a QB2 battle for him and Stetson. But I don't really think that that's shocking. Like, he was never going to push Matthew Stafford this year. It's just going to be one for the future. It's just, McVay, I think, is on win now, and Les Snead is obviously looking after his team and his longevity as general manager and top around.
I'm going to say it now. I'm going to say it early before Carol Boyle comes back on this podcast on Monday. I like what the Jets did last night. I think they actually did some really good work in terms of putting players on this team that can come in and contribute immediately. We spoke with Sadiq last night. We spoke with the fact that tight end now, the Oregon Ducks, that he was not necessarily just a tight end. He had the traits to be like a wide receiver. And the Jets go that route. And obviously to come back in at the back end of the first round and take Cooper, the wide receiver. If you're a Jets fan right now, you should. I know that they have their staked with history of all these disgruntled players and teams and fans over the years. They never get what they want, and they always seem to implode. But right now, I know it's April, but you look at what they've done, and in particular last night, you can't help but be impressed with Darren Mugia and how he's framing this team together.
Yeah, even though they picked up Geno Smith, he's now back. They still have the running back. They still have Garrett Wilson. They've now picked up Omar Cooper Jr. They've picked up Kenyon Sadiq. it shows that they knew that they couldn't put points up on the board. I watched them last year in London, and they were turgid as an offense. Just could not get anything going at all. And they were just lucky that they ran into Broncos being on the day that was not very good itself. I think going forward, this was maybe a turning point for the Jets as a franchise. Obviously, there's still a lot of pressure there. There always is in New York. We both know that it's the pressure cooker. But yeah, I'm quite impressed with what they did. We touted Sadiq as being up against the pick at number 16. We were all pretty happy and commended them when they made the deal.
I think the fallout as well from the Rams selecting Ty Simpson at 13 was that McCoy Lemon started to drop. And he didn't drop too far. He drops to 20. You see an Eagles and Cowboys yet again conduct a trade between each other. The Cowboys drop down 3 places. The Eagles come up to 20 to take McCoy. I think the interesting thing this morning, which again is coming out of it, and I think we spoke about briefly last night as we closed out the show and as we were putting things together thereafter, that the Steelers were talking to him on the phone, and then all of a sudden the call got dismissed by the fact that the Eagles are ringing him. And the Eagles today are lauding it up that they found a great wide receiver. I think it signifies, as we said last night, this is the end for AJ Brown. They kind of dismissed it slightly in their press conference after, but it's inevitable he's going to get traded come June the 4th or thereafter. He's an interesting dynamic because he strikes me like we've seen the press conference at the combine, and people are kind of a little bit think he's a bit off-putting. This is either going to be one of those picks for me in 3 or 4 years we're going to look back on. I don't think there's a middle of the road with this player. I think it's one of those we're going to look back at 3 or 4 years, and he either is going to be such a compelling story in the NFL and a great wide receiver, or he's actually going to be imploded. I'm not entirely sure where I'm sitting right now. It's probably very early in the process. We haven't seen him play one game yet, but it does strike me as the type of guy would have the mentality to go into Philadelphia. But we've also seen with players when it goes bad in Philadelphia, it can go very bad quickly. It's going to be an interesting off-season and conversation, even in the camp come August, how Lemon kind of transitions into the NFL.
It's just purely Howie Roseman doing Howie Roseman things, really, isn't it? Just what he does, he finds these players that seem to fall in his strike while the iron's hot, and he goes up and picks them up, and lo and behold, he picked up another good prospect, above average prospect. They did it with Cooper DeJean and Quinion Mitchell when they were falling a couple of years ago, and they're picking up a wide receiver who plays in the slot and will be able to stretch the field. But a lot of people are talking about the tenacity and the ferociousness that Mahai Lemon plays with, not just in the receiving game, but also in the blocking game as well. And this does feel like that kind of Philly kick. It's almost like the player fits the mold. And like you said, he was on the phone to the Steelers. The Eagles made the call, jumped up, and the NFL must be really happy because it makes one of those amazing draft day stories that they can put into the ethos for the next few weeks until the beginning of the season. But you hate to say it as a Giants fan, but Howie Roseman always seems to come up smelling of roses.
A lot of teams were jostling for position thereafter. It was like the start of a race at Cheltenham on the opening day where people were trying to get ahead of themselves. A lot of moving. Like we're talking about, like I think Connor said it on the live show last night. I'd be interested to see where this kind of tallies at other drafts in terms of how many trades took place, because it just seems to be, I wouldn't say we're losing track towards the end, but it was back and forth of teams moving out, Chiefs moving in, Bills moving back, now Bills in the second round, 49ers moving back. I think it was a case of everyone trying to get into a position to get what they feel is the best player available at that time. I'm going to close it with one more, and that is the Super Bowl champions, Seattle Seahawks, picking at 32. Ben Costello was doing the production for us last night, sat there basically all night, assuming that the Seahawks would trade out. They didn't. They were one of the few that didn't at the end. They take Jadarian Price from Notre Dame, 2 running backs from Notre Dame go off the board. And you spoke about it last night. It's not necessarily that he's not a great running back. It's just he's been overshadowed by Jeremiah Love for quite some time. His production numbers were down, not necessarily because he's not doing well, because everything was running through Love. This is a nice little pickup for the Seahawks because they've lost Kenneth Walker in free agency. They've got Charbonnet coming back from injury. It just feels like he's going to fit right into what they want to do, and the Seahawks will be back challenging again come September in the NFC West.
Yeah, I actually don't mind this pick. I think that he is a good running back. I just feel like there is a bit of a risk here with what you've done because, like I said last night on the live stream, he's never started a game in college as a running back. He only had more than 15 touches or 15 touches once in 40-odd games. There's not as much tread on the tires, but are you getting a raw player? Are you getting a player who maybe can only deliver in a lower level of snaps and someone who's not on the field every single down? I'm just not sure if that's what the Seahawks can afford to have right now because of the fact that Zach Charbonnet is injured and we're not sure when he's going to be coming back. I don't hate the pick as in the terms of the fit of the fact that they needed a running back and this was the de facto second best running back on the board. I just feel like they took him way too early for what he could be, and they could look at this in a poor light at the end of it.
Interesting conversation. There'll be many more interesting conversations to take place over the course of the weekend. Second round kicks off at midnight Irish time tonight. Second round, third round. Then we've got the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th taking place from 5 o'clock Irish time tomorrow evening. That's a quick initial reaction. We're going to get back into it, I think, on Monday evening, 9 o'clock. We're going to go live Monday, having a full recap of the draft and have Kieran Boyle, Kieran Donovan, and team back in action. And myself, and Conor Brophy. But for now, that is the Irish NFL Show reacting to the first round of the NFL draft. Craig, thanks as always for your time.